The world is holding its breath as a new terrifying geopolitical reality unfolds in the Western Hemisphere. The conflict between the United States and Venezuela, already at a fever pitch, has just been catastrophically complicated by the arrival of a formidable Iranian naval fleet. This is not a diplomatic visit. It is a direct, calculated challenge to American naval supremacy and a brazen act of defiance against the U.S.-imposed blockade of Venezuela. The turquoise waters of the Caribbean are now the stage for a high-stakes standoff between the world's most powerful navy and a determined, technologically advanced adversary from the Middle East. What began as a tense, decades-long standoff, punctuated by proxy skirmishes and fiery rhetoric, and recently escalated by the USS Halsey incident, has, in the last hours, transformed into an unprecedented international crisis. In a globally televised address, the President of the United States, his face grim and resolute, declared that the arrival of the Iranian fleet constitutes a hostile intervention and a direct threat to the security and stability of the entire Western Hemisphere. He announced that the U.S. Fourth Fleet has been given explicit authorization to interdict and repel any vessel attempting to breach the blockade, regardless of its flag. Simultaneously, in Caracas, Nicolas Maduro, flanked by his top military commanders and draped in the Venezuelan flag, delivered a triumphant broadcast. He hailed the arrival of the Iranian fleet as a historic act of solidarity and a victory for the sovereignty of free nations, declaring that the Iranian presence would shatter the illegal and genocidal blockade imposed by the Yankee aggressor. The world is now facing a horrifying reality, a hot war in America's backyard, now featuring a powerful third-party actor determined to escalate the conflict. This in-depth analysis will take you inside the heart of this new, terrifying dynamic. We will dissect the precise composition of the Iranian force, analyze the terrifying military power being arrayed against the U.S. Navy, and explore the catastrophic scenarios that could now unfold, potentially dragging the entire world into the flames of a wider conflagration. Prepare yourself. The war for the Western Hemisphere has just acquired a dangerous new dimension. The total war that now engulfs the Caribbean, transforming it from a tourist paradise into a theater of conflict, was ignited by a single, brutal, incident in the historically disputed waters of the Gulf of Venezuela. According to initial frantic and now confirmed reports from the Pentagon, the USS Halsey, an Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer, was conducting what it termed routine freedom of navigation operations near the Los Monjes archipelago. These small barren islands, strategically located at the entrance to the Gulf, have long been a flashpoint, with Venezuelan authorities vehemently claiming these waters as their sovereign territory, a claim the U.S. has consistently refused to recognize, viewing it as an infringement on international maritime law. At approximately 0400 hours local time, under the cloak of pre-dawn darkness, the Halsey was approached by not one, but two Venezuelan Vosper-class fast attack craft, the Federación and the Independencia, operating with aggressive intent. What followed was a rapid, fatal, and irreversible escalation. The Pentagon alleges that after issuing a standard challenge via radio, which was met with defiant silence, one of the Venezuelan vessels, the Federación, launched a sea-skimming automat anti-ship missile. The missile, a potent weapon Venezuela acquired years ago from Italy, designed for coastal defense and naval interdiction, struck the USS Halsey on its port side, amidships. The impact ripped a gaping hole in the destroyer's hull, triggering secondary explosions and an immediate raging fire. Initial reports indicate significant structural damage and an unknown, but presumed high number of casualties, including both dead and wounded American sailors. The sight of the proud U.S. warship listing, engulfed in smoke and flames, sent a chilling message across the world. But the American response was not just immediate, it was overwhelming and merciless. Before the second Venezuelan vessel, the Independencia, could react or launch its own ordnance, a volley of missiles, including a Standard Missile-2 from the Halsey itself and precision-guided munitions from an overhead P-8 Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft, obliterated both Venezuelan ships. Debris and burning wreckage rained down on the waves, leaving no survivors. The engagement lasted less than 5 minutes, but its repercussions would be felt for decades. Within minutes of the Halsey incident, the situation spiraled catastrophically out of control. The U.S. Southern Command in Doral, Florida, was elevated to DEFCON 1, the highest possible state of alert, signifying that war was not just imminent, but actively underway. The USS George Washington Carrier Strike Group, a colossal floating city of air power and naval might, which was on maneuvers in the mid-Atlantic, was ordered to proceed at flank speed towards the Caribbean, its FA-18 Super Hornets already being armed for combat. Simultaneously, flights of F-22 Raptors, the world's most advanced stealth fighters, and B-2 Spirit stealth bombers, capable of delivering massive payloads, were scrambled from bases across the continental United States. Their targets, key military installations, naval bases, and airfields deep within Venezuelan territory. In a chilling televised statement that echoed across a stunned nation, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, declared, "An unprovoked attack on a United States naval vessel is an attack on the United States of America. Let there be no doubt, those responsible will be held accountable. The process of holding them accountable has already begun, and it will be swift, decisive, and overwhelming." The Caribbean was no longer a region of mere tension. It era now, a live-fire war zone, and the world braced for the inevitable. The most significant and terrifying development in this escalating conflict is the direct intervention of the Islamic Republic of Iran. While the world focused on the US-Venezuela exchange, Iran executed a bold, calculated move that has fundamentally altered the strategic calculus in the Western Hemisphere. This is not the typical proxy warfare or arms shipment. This is a full-scale naval deployment designed to shatter the American blockade and establish a permanent Iranian foothold in the region. The Iranian fleet, which successfully navigated the Atlantic undetected by US or Allied intelligence until it was nearly at its destination, is a formidable and provocative force. It is led by the Iris Makran, a massive forward-based ship converted from an oil tanker, capable of carrying helicopters, fast attack craft, and vast supplies, effectively acting as a floating base of operations. Accompanying it are several key assets, including the new generation of Iranian warships, the Iris Shahid Soleimani, a highly advanced catamaran-hulled missile corvette designed for high-speed coastal operations, the Iris Shahid Mahdavi, a large forward-deployed logistics and command vessel, and the Iris Shahid Sayed Shirazi, a heavily armed frigate. The presence of these vessels, particularly the Shahid Soleimani and Shahid Mahdavi, represents a significant leap in Iran's blue water capability and its willingness to project power thousands of miles from its shores. The deployment of this specific task force is a masterstroke of geopolitical theater. The Iris Makran, with its vast capacity, ensures the fleet's self-sufficiency, negating the need for vulnerable resupply stops. The Shahid Soleimani and its sister ships, while smaller than US destroyers, are fast, stealthy, and armed with advanced anti-ship cruise missiles and sophisticated electronic warfare suites. They are designed for asymmetrical warfare, to swarm and overwhelm larger, less agile adversaries in contested waters. Their presence in the Caribbean forces the US Navy to adopt a defensive posture, constantly monitoring for surprise attacks from smaller, highly maneuverable vessels, a scenario the US military has long sought to avoid. This is a direct importation of the Persian Gulf doctrine of naval warfare into America's backyard. In a defiant press conference held from the deck of the Iris Makran anchored just outside Venezuelan territorial waters, the commander of the Iranian Navy, Admiral Shahram Irani, issued a direct warning to the United States. The Iranian fleet is here to ensure the free flow of commerce to our sovereign ally, Venezuela. Any attempt by the United States Navy to interdict or interfere with our mission will be met with a response that is immediate, reciprocal, and overwhelming. The era of the Monroe Doctrine is over. The Persian Gulf has met the Caribbean, and we will not retreat. This statement, broadcast globally, was a direct shot across the bow of American foreign policy. signaling that the U.S. is no longer dealing with a regional conflict, but a global confrontation with an actor known for its asymmetrical warfare capabilities. The U.S. Navy, which has historically viewed the Caribbean as an American lake, is now faced with a nightmare scenario: engaging a battle-hardened, technologically capable adversary in close proximity to its own shores. The challenge is not just military, it is political. Any miscalculation or accidental engagement could instantly transform the U.S.-Venezuela conflict into a direct U.S.-Iran war, with devastating consequences for global oil markets and the stability of the entire Middle East. The Iranian gambit has succeeded in its primary goal, forcing the United States to divide its attention and resources, and demonstrating that no region of the world is safe from the long reach of Tehran's strategic ambition. The declaration of the Caribbean as a combat zone has had immediate, profound, and catastrophic consequences that extend far beyond the immediate theater of war. The Federal Aviation Administration and the International Maritime Organization have issued unprecedented emergency notices, rerouting all civilian air and sea traffic away from a vast, rapidly expanding exclusion zone. This zone now covers the entire southern Caribbean, stretching from the coast of Colombia, across the Venezuelan coastline, and extending eastward to encompass the Lesser Antilles. The region's vibrant, tourism-dependent economies, from Aruba to Barbados, have collapsed overnight, their pristine beaches and luxury resorts now desolate, their skies empty of commercial flights and their harbors devoid of cruise ships. The economic fallout is immediate and devastating. Global financial markets have reacted with panic. Oil prices have skyrocketed on global markets, with Brent crude jumping over 30% in a matter of hours, reaching levels not seen in decades. This surge is fueled by acute fears of a complete disruption to Venezuelan oil exports, a critical supply for some nations, and, more broadly, the security of major shipping lanes through the Panama Canal and the vital sea routes that connect the Americas. The specter of global recession, if not depression, now looms large. Meanwhile, the U.S. Navy has begun to enforce the blockade with terrifying efficiency and overwhelming force. Reports are emerging from intelligence sources of U.S. Virginia-class nuclear-powered attack submarines, the silent hunters of the deep, enforcing a choke point strategy. These stealthy predators are positioned at key passages and straits, effectively blocking any vessel from entering or leaving Venezuelan waters. The U.S. Coast Guard, now operating under direct Navy command, has been given expanded authority to board and seize any vessel suspected of attempting to breach the blockade, leading to tense standoffs and, in some cases, violent confrontations at sea. The fog of war is rapidly descending, obscuring the truth and amplifying the chaos. Both Washington and Caracas have unleashed a torrent of propaganda, each side seeking to control the narrative and demonize the other. U.S. networks show dramatic, continuous footage of the damaged USS Halsey and interviews with grieving families, while Venezuelan state television endlessly repeats images of what it claims are civilian areas hit by cowardly American bombs and impassioned speeches from Maduro. Getting accurate, verifiable information has become nearly impossible, as independent journalists are expelled or suppressed. The Caribbean is no longer a collection of sovereign nations. It is a battleground, a massive, deadly chessboard where the stakes are nothing less than global dominance and the lives of millions. The world holds its breath, gripped by a chilling sense of dread, as military strategists, political leaders, and ordinary citizens alike contemplate the terrifying possibilities of what comes next. The path of escalation is not merely a slippery slope. It is a precipice, with each step leading closer to a global catastrophe that could redefine human civilization. The initial incident was just the spark. The inferno now threatens to consume everything, with Iran's arrival acting as a massive accelerant. Scenario 1. The blockade breach and the first shots of the U.S.-Iran war. The Iranian fleet, led by the Iris Makran, attempts a highly publicized, provocative breach of the U.S. blockade, carrying vital supplies and military hardware into Venezuela. The U.S. president is faced with an agonizing choice: allow the breach, severely undermining American credibility and the blockade itself, or give the terrifying order to fire upon Iranian naval vessels. This is the Cuban Missile Crisis of the 21st century, but with far less room for diplomatic maneuver. A single shot fired by either side could instantly transform the regional conflict into a direct US-Iran war, with immediate devastating consequences in the Persian Gulf, where Iran holds significant asymmetrical warfare advantages, including swarms of fast attack craft and advanced anti-ship missiles. The global oil supply would be instantly jeopardized, plunging the world into an economic abyss. Scenario 2. The asymmetrical counterstrike, Iran's global reach. Instead of a direct naval confrontation, Iran utilizes its well-established network of proxy forces and asymmetrical capabilities. While the U.S. Navy is tied down in the Caribbean, Iranian-backed groups launch coordinated, devastating attacks against U.S. interests, allies, or even the homeland. This could include sophisticated cyber attacks against U.S. infrastructure, drone strikes on U.S. bases in the Middle East, or even terrorist attacks on U.S. soil. The goal is to force the U.S. to divert resources away from the Caribbean, thus relieving the pressure on Venezuela. The U.S. finds itself fighting a shadow war on multiple fronts, struggling to identify and neutralize an enemy that does not wear a uniform or fight on a conventional battlefield. Scenario 3. The technological transfer and the Venezuelan fortress. The Iranian fleet successfully anchors and begins offloading its cargo, not just food and fuel, but advanced military technology. This includes Iranian-made anti-ship missiles, sophisticated drones like the Shahed series, and advanced electronic warfare systems. Venezuela, now armed with cutting-edge Iranian technology and advised by battle-hardened Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC trainers, becomes an impenetrable fortress. The U.S. is faced with the prospect of a prolonged, costly, and bloody ground invasion against a much more capable and determined adversary. The conflict shifts from a naval blockade to a brutal urban insurgency, a nightmare scenario that could drain American blood and treasure for years. Scenario 4. The unthinkable alliance, a global axis of defiance. Iran's successful challenge emboldens other U.S. adversaries. Russia, China, and perhaps even North Korea, seeing the U.S. military stretched thin and its resolve questioned, begin their own coordinated actions in their respective spheres of influence. This could involve Russia increasing pressure on NATO's eastern flank, China escalating tensions in the South China Sea, or North Korea conducting a major missile test. The U.S. is forced to confront a multi-front global crisis, with its resources and attention dangerously divided. The conflict in the Caribbean becomes the catalyst for a fundamental, terrifying shift in the global BA. The first shots of the U.S.-Venezuela war were a tragedy. The arrival of the Iranian fleet is a potential global catastrophe. The Caribbean is no longer a regional conflict. It is the epicenter of a direct confrontation between the United States and a determined, powerful adversary from the Middle East. The Monroe Doctrine has been challenged not by a regional power, but by a global actor willing to project its force thousands of miles to defy American will. The stakes have never been higher. The decisions made in Washington, Caracas, and Tehran in the next 72 hours will not only determine the fate of millions, but potentially the entire trajectory of the 21st century. Will the U.S. risk a global war to maintain its dominance? Or will the Iranian gambit succeed in fracturing American resolve? Never has the world teetered so precariously on the edge. This is a story in development of monumental and existential importance. How should the U.S. Navy respond to the Iranian challenge? Should they fire the first shot or risk the blockade being broken? What are the long-term implications of Iran establishing a permanent military presence in the Western Hemisphere? Share your urgent analysis, your fears, and your predictions in the comments below. Like this video, subscribe to our channel for continuous unfiltered updates, and click the notification bell to stay on the absolute front line of this historic unfolding crisis. Your voice matters now more than ever as the world plunges into chaos.